The Stranded J Podcast.
Welcome back to the Stranded J Podcast. I'm your host, Stranded J. So we are going to do a little bit of a hybrid today and discuss video games. And it's funny because, even 20 years ago, I think the relationship between movies and video games was pretty separated in many ways. We had some games that came out in that time that were kind of groundbreaking and push the medium forward as an art form and things like that. But there's one particular game director that I wanted to talk about today who has a new game coming out this week. And I've been a big fan of his for a very, very long time. And many people have, he has more of an inspiration from movies than he does video games, even though he's a video game director. His name is Hideo Kojima. And if you haven't heard of that name, I'll give you a quick rundown of who that is. Hideo Kojima started out over at Konami. Konami made a lot of different games, including things such as like Silent Hill and things like that. But one of their biggest game franchises they have and have had is the Metal Gear series. That was the creation of Hideo Kojima. Metal Gear was a series that came out. They had multiple games, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Then they got into Metal Gear Solid. You got into Metal Gear Solid 2, 3, 4, Peace Walker, all these different games over many different console generations. The probably the most groundbreaking one for many people is Metal Gear Solid, which came out on the PlayStation 1. The thing that differentiated that game from many others in the time was the production quality. You could tell that there was a real director behind it. A lot of games in that time, if you're not a gamer, but if you are, that you can go back to for different examples are games such as Resident Evil and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Very, very groundbreaking classic games that people love. However, if you go back to the original versions of those games and listen to the voice acting, they're definitely their budget did not go into that aspect. You have stuff like Castlevania Symphony of the Night with lines, die, monster, you don't belong in this world. Like classic nostalgia, but not the best voice acting you could ever find. So when Metal Gear Solid came out, you could just tell that there was an emphasis on the quality of the voice acting, the quality of the just the production value. One thing Hideo Kojima did with Metal Gear Solid is he created Lego sets of each level, and then he was able to like point the camera and find what angles he wanted the camera in the game to do the cutscenes for. And then, like I said, he hired in some like actual great voice acting that actually had some emotion and some heart to it. Hideo Kojima was inspired as a child by movies. His parents made him, they would before bed watch a movie and they had to finish the movie before he could go to bed. Japanese culture, can have some strict moments in their life. And they would have him watch a movie and then he would have to kind of tell them what the themes were, what he thought about it, all these things. And then as he was growing up, and he would go to the movie theater all the time. So he was very, very inspired to the point where he straight up ripped off a lot of stuff in his games from other movies out of love, but he did. I mean, a lot of things you'll see in his stuff has like a lot of it has sci-fi twists to it, but you can see a lot of Escape from New York, John Carpenter. You can see a lot of like Terminator and James Cameron inspirations in there. But the thing that was just great was to see someone who took the medium seriously. And a lot of, he's very divisive in many ways because he breaks the fourth wall all the time. He does some really crazy, wild, out there stories and brings in some concepts that are hard for people to understand. And if they do understand them, not to, insult people's intelligence, because I know there are a lot of people who understand them and still don't like his stuff. It's just sometimes it's not everyone's cup of tea. Well, he speaks to me a lot when it comes to video games. And I wanted to kind of just talk about some of the things that he did that were awesome. One of which was Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid was a tactical espionage game, very sneaky. It was less shooting people and more sneaking past them or using different ways to get past the situation. Kojima introduced a lot of gameplay mechanics in his games that there's one. It's one of those where like you don't even know you could do that. You could be playing this game for 20 years and you still find, oh, I didn't realize I could do this to get around this scenario. And as the games got more advanced, he added more and more to that. Metal Gear Solid 2 is another one that a lot of people talk about because it was the first big example of a major twist in a game through marketing. Not to spoil, a very old game at this point, but if you are looking to play the Metal Gear Solid series and you don't want to be spoiled, save this podcast for another time and come back to it when you're done playing what ones you want to play, because I'm going to spoil all of these to a degree. Metal Gear Solid 2, you have the franchise, kind of took off and became a big deal with the first one. You played as Solid Snake, kind of a Snake Plissken, kind of inspiration, James Bond a little bit of, just these action characters, very sneaky, very well trained in the military, going through and infiltrating and destroying things. And there's a whole story behind it. You get used to this character as you go along. And then they introduced Metal Gear Solid 2. The promotion had Solid Snake in brand new graphics on the PS2, so he looked even better than ever. And they showed him on an oil tanker, infiltrating all this stuff, and it looked amazing. So people bought the game with the excitement of playing another adventure with Solid Snake, when you realize as you play the game that the tanker scenario is kind of like the prologue tutorial. And once that first, hour or two, I think, is over, you wake up into this new scenario as a character named Raiden. Completely different character. You have no idea who he is. You have to completely relearn his origins, where he's from, what he's about. And then you realize you play the entire game as him. And that turned a lot of people off initially because they were so used to using Solid Snake and being excited to use him again. And to have this brand new, blonde-haired kind of anime-looking guy that you run around and play as, it upset people. But the people who stuck to it realized that Raiden is a great character too, and you get really invested in his story, and you get really invested in what he's doing. And so you get through this game, and this is where we run into I'm kind of foreshadowing for the game I'm going to be talking about here shortly. With Metal Gear Solid 2, there were, Kojima likes to take a lot of real world concerns and topics and bring them into his games. And in this one, a lot of it is the idea of AI, which this game came out right around 2000, 2001. And, in the world we're living in right now with AI, it's almost like he is like a Nostradamus. I mean, he predicted so many things that we are dealing with now. And the biggest twist of this game is by the end of it, you've been going through this entire scenario and you're getting so invested in this story when really he's being manipulated by an AI. And it's all a farce. None of this is real. And it was all a big test. And it brings to this final cinematic where they, him and Snake are discussing kind of AI and the world and the government and how you can't trust anything. And it turns into a very philosophical question, from 2001. So these games only get better with time. So we run into these games now, and it's fun to replay them. So Metal Gear Solid 2 ended up being a big hit. It's probably it's the more difficult of the gameplay when it comes to the gameplay in the games. But, a lot of people have a fond memory of that one now. And Raiden is a staple of the franchise. Metal Gear Solid 3, we introduce a prequel, Vietnam War, and you're playing as a different character. Look, I'm not going to get into the deep end of the story of Hideo Kojima games, right? The one thing that everyone knows about Hideo Kojima is he has very, very complicated out there stories that you could play the game and you still don't really know what's going on. So, it takes a lot of research if that, and then some of them, it takes a lot of, just replaying, kind of like Christopher Nolan in many ways. So, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs to try to explain to you the entire Metal Gear Solid franchise, because I could be here for days telling you who each character is, how there are multiple Snakes, all different versions, and why they're multiple versions, and who the Patriots are. Like, it's a whole thing. If you want to go down that rabbit hole on your own, I highly suggest it because it's actually very good and interesting, but it's a lot of work, right? So we're just going to kind of gloss over some of these here. Third one's a prequel set in Vietnam, and you play as another snake, essentially. And that one is probably the fan favorite. It's the one that has the most interesting gameplay elements and concepts in that way. Then we run into some prequels and things like that. He's made quite a few of these. Metal Gear Solid 4 came out on the PS3, probably the most revolutionary, kind of ended the franchise. You play as Snake again, and it's more of a modern take. You bring back Raiden. It kind of crosses everything over into this big kind of climactic end. That's where it didn't end, though. He went and moved on to do Metal Gear Solid, Ground Zeroes, and the Phantom Pain. That was the fifth game, and this one was also a prequel, kind of tying in the loose ends between Metal Gear Solid 3 in Vietnam and Metal Gear Solid 4 to kind of make everything tied up. Now, this is where we run into some of the history of Hideo Kojima that leads to where I'm trying to get at here. He was in the middle of making this game. This is probably the most ambitious Metal Gear Solid game. It was, open world. So, like, how I said in the first, even with the first game, there's so many things you didn't even know you could do to get around these scenarios. This one was open world, and there are so many concepts in the gameplay and in the story that you could play this game for 100 hours and you'll still find new things to do in it. Graphics are amazing. He was always very he's a very detail-oriented person and really cares very specifically about things in his productions. He kind of takes over everything. He doesn't just, direct it. He cares about the music. He cares about the shots. He cares about the dialogue. He cares about the translation dialogue. He cares about a lot of this stuff. And this is where him and Konami kind of had a falling out. I think Konami, they were moving on to do like pachinko machines and really kind of get out of the video game business, which they're now back because they realized that was a stupid mistake. But Hideo Kojima's were very high in production, very costly, took a lot of time. They felt like they didn't have a lot of control. He had most of the control. And so they announced that they were ousting him, essentially. And they ousted him before the game even completed. So Metal Gear Solid 5 has, kind of a choppy, unfinished story to it. It has enough to kind of it kind of has enough for you to move on and understand the whole Metal Gear series. And it did kind of bridge a lot of concepts that people were confused about as they went along with the games. But Kojima ended up, having a falling out with them and moving on, and they let him go. And so when you play that game, it's just, it's choppy. It's not fully finished. It feels like, even with a definitive experience where they added some stuff, you can just kind of tell. So the day after his contract ended with Konami, Hideo Kojima announced he was starting his own production company, Kojima Productions. And there wasn't a lot to it at that point. He was starting from scratch. He had to end up, kind of figuring out who he wanted to partner with, who would give him a loan, would people trust him? And it took a lot of time. Office buildings, in Japan wouldn't necessarily accommodate because they're like, you don't have anything to show. You're just starting from scratch. But then some people knew his previous work. So he was able to make some things work and ended up having a partnership with Sony, where they helped him shop around for a new game engine. For people who don't know what that is, it's essentially the bones of the game. Essentially, it's what you create your game on and what makes the graphics. Essentially, a lot of people create their own engine, and then a lot of other people, borrow someone else's engine. He went around and shopped for him, essentially going around to other Sony-owned developers and found what engine would work for him best. And so he ended up using this one called the Decima engine, which was created by Guerrilla Games, who did the Horizon Zero Dawn series. And he was on his way. He got a staff of about 80 people by the end of it, and they started working on his new concept. That concept got me very, very excited because I always loved Kojima. I loved how out there his stuff was. Another thing he's very well known for is very, very long cutscenes. Metal Gear Solid 4, I think the final cutscene is about an hour and a half, maybe, which is crazy for a video game. You're like, I just want to play the video game, but that's where this crossover kind of happens, right? he's more of a director, for like a a film auteur, if you want to say that. And he's very into that. So he was all about the cutscenes, the acting, the shots, the story progression, new concepts in story and storytelling. And so, if he wasn't your cup of tea, you kind of were like, why do I care? But when I knew Kojima was coming out with a new game, I actually want to take you back even one more step too. While he was working at Konami, right before he was let go, they actually were going to work with him on a Silent Hill game. Silent Hill was their horror franchise, similar to Resident Evil. They had made a lot of different iterations of it, and it was kind of failing. It was getting a little stale. So they brought in Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, of all people, another director, very well known director for horror and many different things. And they were going to work together on a new Silent Hill game. And the announcement came with a demo that just kind of soft opened on the PlayStation Store under the name PT, playable teaser. And no one really knew what it was. They didn't know who made it, and they jumped into it. And it was I will still say to this day, it is the scariest video game I have ever played in my entire life. And it's a very quick demo of a concept. And essentially, you're walking around a house, hearing a radio with murders, and it's a big loop, and there's a lot of ghosts. There's you're getting followed by a ghost. There's jump scares. There's creepy concepts. You can no longer play it because Konami shortly fired Kojima and canceled the game. And while they canceled it, they also canceled PT, and they took it off the store, so you can't get it anymore. Unless you have it downloaded on a console already and you never deleted it, you can't really get it back anymore. And it's a shame because it was genius. It also revealed at the end of the demo, once you completed it, that it was Silent Hills was going to be the name. And it was going to star Norman Reedus of The Walking Dead, Boondock Saints, huge name nowadays. So Kojima ended up leaving, starting his new Kojima Productions. They ended up getting some stuff working. He got it started on a concept. And we got a new a new release for a trailer at one of the game, I don't remember if it's E3 or the Game Awards. I can't remember at this point. And the new announcement was just a quick trailer, showed Norman Reedus. Everyone thought maybe it was another Silent Hill, and they figured something out. Turns out it's not, and it ends with the name Death Stranding. Death Stranding is the first game from Kojima Productions, starring Norman Reedus. It has Mads Mikkelsen and many other big actors. Guillermo del Toro plays a role in it. And you also have a lot of other very actors. This is where Kojima was able to bring in Hollywood to his games. And he did a lot of mocap for it and things like that. And as Kojima is, he's very divisive. This game was not like a Metal Gear Solid. It was not a stealth action game. It was not a militaristic kind of sci-fi game. It is a sci-fi game, but it's a bit of a sci-fi horror with a new concept called the Strand system. And this is where, when he went to his new team and came up with this concept, everyone thought he was crazy because they couldn't comprehend. It was something new. It was something you'd never seen before, which Kojima is known for. And essentially, it was he wanted to emphasize in Death Stranding the idea of the rope and the stick, which is a concept from long ago of the stick is used to push people away. The rope is used to bring people together and tie them together. Most video games, we use the concept of the stick. There's a lot of shooting, there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of action. And while he wasn't, while in that concept, the stick is necessary along with the rope. But he wanted to emphasize the fact that maybe we use the rope more than the stick. And so he created Death Stranding, where you are a courier in a kind of a post-apocalyptic world where this is another one I'm not going to go too deep into just because it is it's a lot. It's a lot. And and I don't want to spoil too much either, but it's kind of hard to explain. You kind of have to play it to understand it. But getting out some of the concepts, you're in a post-apocalyptic world where essentially the living and the dead are starting to converge. The idea of a beach, which is a representation of, you can call it purgatory, or the place before you go into the afterlife, where people go after they die. Something has happened that has led to this beach to converge with the world, the living world. And you have these things called BTs. They're essentially the dead. They're ghosts, but they're a different concept of ghosts. And they create this stuff through the beach called Coryllium, these chiral crystals that can power things. And the chiral crystals being crossed over into this world also creates a new type of weather system of rain and snow that is dangerous. It's called timefall because when it touches people or anything, it ages it fast. So most people have now, that on top of a whole other concept called a void out, which is, essentially when people die, when they start to decay, the Coryllium creates a chain reaction in their body that they call a void out, and they have a massive explosion, almost like a nuclear explosion. So when people die, as they started dying, they were blowing up these cities. And the timefall was also aging people. So this has led to a world where everyone is sheltered. And they do not go outside. They stay sheltered, and they're not connected to each other in any way. Mind you, this is 2019 when this game came out, and it was being developed years before this. So you are a porter, a courier who takes packages and delivers them to these people who are sheltered, and you are willing to withstand the timefall. You wear special suits so you don't get touched. And the point of the game and the gameplay is you take these packages. You have to make sure you have them packed a certain way so you don't, you can carry them. And you go across many different types of terrain using many different tools to get to these places and avoiding timefall, and not degrading the packages enough because of the timefall, and also avoiding BTs, which kind of try to pull you in and they lead to boss battles and things like that. That's kind of the gameplay side of it. And then obviously the rest of the game is figuring all this out and why and who's doing this and why is this a thing. So essentially, Norman Reedus goes around and, he has his own personal story as well. And the concept is very, very deep. It goes very, very far into sci-fi, horror, and, real world issues. And the real world issues is the concept of the rope we were talking about. He is tasked by what's left of the government to try to connect everyone through the chiral network, which is an internet system that if people participate into it, it means that they are all connected through this chiral network in a delivery system where everyone can communicate that way. And it's trying to reconnect the world to each other. And what is the concept behind that when it comes to modern take is, are we too reliant on technology? Do we not connect in a human way anymore? What does it mean to connect physically and emotionally and help your fellow man and all of these things? Well, right around the time this game came out, 2019, I remember specifically getting it when it came out and playing it, and I moved out to California. But around that time also, we were dealing with COVID. COVID happened right about, I would say, this came out in, I think, November of 2019. So about 4 or 5 months later, we start dealing with COVID, and people start thinking that Kojima is a bit of a Nostradamus again, because he I don't think he predicted this happening, but I think he also was thinking of concepts that ended up happening, and by happenstance, it was just good timing. But his stuff ages like fine wine for that reason, because these concepts of connecting with each other and what does it mean to be isolated and what does it mean to, to help your fellow man and all of these things, they started to become even more prevalent as the game aged, because then we dealt with, post-COVID and how we're recovering from that, and mental capacity to get back onto your feet and do things again, and all of these ideas. The game was mixed for a lot of people. A lot of people called it a walking simulator. A lot of people thought it was slow-paced, boring. And then there were the people who were either a fan of Kojima's, or they were, or they just tried the game and had never played a Kojima game, and they really liked it. And they were really, really excited for it, and I was one of them. I've played countless hours of Death Stranding, and I think I'll continue to keep playing it too, because I just love the gameplay loop, but also the concept and the story is very interesting. Now, here we are in 2025, and this Thursday, Death Stranding 2 on the beach comes out. Kojima's newest game. This sequel is a direct sequel to the first one. And we don't know a whole lot about it because he's a very secretive person. On top of he has a lot of twists in his games and things that he saves for when you play it. But I'm very excited to see where he goes with it. The thing that a lot of people have said is that he had to the reason the game took so long to come out is because he kind of had to restart his storytelling with it because of COVID. And COVID made him, after that happened, he started working shortly after the first game on the second one. And while COVID was going on, it made him change his concepts. I hear this one's a little more cynical. I hear this one's a little bit more dark, but I also hear that this one has the same bones as the first one and gives people thought. And the reviews just came out like yesterday or the day before, and they are rave reviews. I mean, across the board, this game is, by all intents and purposes, a masterpiece. This one is not as divisive as the last one. This one is not as, the concepts are still there. I've heard that this game is essentially just a better Death Stranding. He did not change it to being more of something else. You are still a courier, you're still doing the same ideas, but the added pacing to the directing style, the added pacing to the story, the dialogue is a little bit better, the graphics are amazing, and the gameplay, the things that people didn't like about it, they like more this time around. So I'm picking it up. I can't wait. I'm super, super excited. I can't wait to see where they take this story because if you've played the first one and beaten it, it kind of does have a definitive ending. I mean, it opens up a lot of doors as well, but like the problem is solved by the end of it. And I'm interested to see where this spins into a sequel. Will it become something that is an unnecessary sequel that felt forced, or is it something that was very natural based off of the first one? And I'm going to guess it's that one because of the reviews it's getting. And I'm very interested to see where that goes. But now we also have Kojima Productions working on a couple other things. They have a game coming out, this another horror game. OD is what it's called as of right now. Very secretive, using similar cast members. And it's partnered with Xbox. And also he is partnered with A23, the production company for movies, for a Death Stranding movie. And from what we've heard of that, which isn't much, that movie is not a direct adaptation of the game. So it's something new as well. Very interested in that. And it just gives you that idea of where video games once were and where they are now. Some of the biggest franchises have been tied in now between TV, movies, video games. Look at The Last of Us. The Last of Us is inspired, I think, a lot by Kojima and the concepts of making a game that doesn't necessarily just have to be, it doesn't have to make, it can make sense. I mean, I love Super Mario Brothers. It's one of my favorite franchises of all time in video games. I just love Super Mario Brothers. But when you think of the concept of Super Mario Brothers, it's imaginative, it's creative, but it's a plumber from Brooklyn who ends up going down a pipe and ending up in a different world, essentially, and stomping on creatures to find a princess. Like, it's very out there we did not intend for this to have a whole story. We just wanted the concept to be a fun video game. And that's great too. But Kojima kind of brought in the idea of what if we take these tools of video games and also apply them into a real story and make it something that is more than just the gameplay. It's beyond that. It's tying in a bunch of different things. So that's where we've gotten stuff like The Last of Us. Another one that I'm inspired by a lot is BioShock. That is another one that kind of paved the way for video games also having art, another level of art to them, and concepts of the human condition and life, and makes you think. And I think that's always kind of a great thing. And now I feel like that's all we're getting. We're getting things like the new God of War series, which does the same thing, Horizon Zero Dawn, even things such as like Red Dead Redemption. Those are all things you can look at and go, man, I could see those things starting as a movie, not a video game. And I'm interested to see where that goes in another way too, because I'm a little concerned we're going to run into a situation where the reason these games are so good is because they take the concepts of movies, they take the concepts of the best parts of video games and the best parts of movies, and they put them together into this thing that only works because it's both. And then they go, well, we could just turn this into a movie and get to a wider audience, but you lose a lot of what made it what it is, and it makes it a little more flat. Red Dead Redemption, while an amazing masterpiece of a game, the reason that story works is because you are playing it. And the gameplay that you do in between the cutscenes is just as important. And when you turn that into just a straight up movie, I think you start to become a little derivative. I think you start to become a little bit too by the numbers. And I think we're starting to see that with like the Last of Us series. I know I didn't watch season 2, but I know that it's getting a lot of backlash. And I think a lot of people go, well, why don't I just play the game? It's a similar thing we're running into with Disney, and they're kind of rehashing animated movies that are classics into just a new live action, quote unquote, when it's really just CGI imitation, where a lot of people go, why don't I just play the thing that it originated from? Or why don't I just watch the thing that it originated from? And the video game industry is kind of running into that right now, where it's like, oh, I could just watch this flat, less, you could tell there's less heart into the production. I could watch this version, or I could just go play the thing that gave the person the idea that is the pure spark. So that's just an interesting concept to see where we go with that. And that's why with Death Stranding, I'm interested to see, are we going to get something like that? Or are we running into something where, you know, we take the concepts of a video game and we turn it into a new thing for movies and TV. And it's something that has the bones of what we love and that, but it's a whole new story. And I think that's probably the way to go. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens, because then also you think about like the Halo series. The Halo series took the concepts and the bones of a video game, a very, very well-loved franchise, and they completely changed kind of the concepts in the show, and it did not go over well. So it depends. Do you have like a really iconic character? I mean, I think that's what we run into like with the Mario Brothers again. That's why the animated movie was so successful, and the 1990s live action Bob Hoskins movie was not well received because they took a concept and tried too hard to make it its own thing. You gotta have to have that balance too. So we're in a weird time. We're in an exciting time, but a weird time, because we're now finding these different forms of media that are all coming out with grade A art, such as comics, TV shows, books, video games, music. And we're expanding upon the reach of those and trying to say, okay, not everyone plays video games, but this is such a good concept. We got to get it to a bigger audience. So let's turn it into a TV show, or let's turn it into a book or something. And then is it the same thing? Is it as well received? Does it only work, like I said, because of it being a hybrid? Those are good questions, but, yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. And I'm sure Kojima will have an answer for that as well, because for some reason, every time he makes a video game, we run into a very similar concept in the real world. If you haven't played any of these games that I talked about today, you can actually pick them up pretty easily nowadays. All the Metal Gear Solid games, besides 4, you can pretty much get anywhere. Steam, PlayStation probably is the best place to play all of them. The only one that's a little hard to find right now is Metal Gear Solid 4. That's really only on the PlayStation 3 right now, but they are coming out with compilations. This is the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1. This comes with Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear 3, or Metal Gear Solid 3. And it has the first like big chunk of games that you can play right on your PlayStation. This is also for the Switch and the Xbox and PC. They also are coming out with a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 and a new engine, so the graphics are updated. That's coming out shortly. Metal Gear Solid 5 you can get in a compilation with both Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain, which are essentially the one game. You can get that in a compilation on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox, Steam. And we just have to kind of wait on the Volume 2 to get to Metal Gear Solid 4, unless you have a PlayStation 3. And then when it comes to Death Stranding, that's now it was a PlayStation exclusive for a while. Now that's also on PC and Xbox. I hear rumors that it's also going to be coming out for the Switch too. That could be exciting. It originally just had the regular game Death Stranding, but now you'll find the Death Stranding Director's Cut, which has some additional gameplay mechanics and stuff you can do. And then there's Death Stranding 2 coming out this Thursday, only for PlayStation as of right now, but it'll move over to PC, I'm sure. And I cannot wait to play it, and I'll probably let you guys know what I think of it. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts? Have you played any Kojima games? Do you like Kojima games? And I don't know, do you think his games age better, or do you think they age worse? Do you think that he's a little in over his head? Do you think he's pretentious? A lot of people think he's very pretentious in the way he approaches video games, kind of like how they think of Christopher Nolan at times as well. Just let me know what your thoughts are, because this is a very... Do you understand his stories? It takes me a while, but I get there. Do you understand the concepts? Do you understand everything about it? Because like I said, I could do that. When it comes to the Metal Gear games, it would take days to explain because there's so many games, so many timelines, so many different things going on. When it comes to Death Stranding, it's one game and it would still take me a very, very long time to fully explain what's going on in it. Because not only is it what I talked to you about, there are so many other small things that he introduces for each character and why they are who they are, and they have certain abilities and things. It's crazy. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. I can't wait to play the second game. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks so much.